Hello and welcome to the Hash Rugby Chat. I really should have muted Ashwin as he took his headphones on and off because, boy, did they crackle something chronic. But there we go. So, hello. Thank you for joining us. Episode 50. Ooh, who knows what it is. But the championship, the Rugby Championship is stale, apparently. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk, does Rasmussen have a plan? Or is it just all just crazy? And we've got some other stuff as well. I will jump over and get my notes, which will be helpful because that's where I wrote down what we're going to talk about. But joining me to talk about all this stuff is Ashwin. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. Kia ora, everybody. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora. Yes, sorry. It's Maori Language Week for those of you who are overseas. Yes, there's been a lot of discussion recently on Twitter about the mispronunciations of names, and yes, I will put my hand up. Sorry, I'm very bad at some pronouncing Pacifica and Maori names, and I'm very sorry about that, folks. It doesn't naturally come to my tongue. I need to go for lessons and a whole bunch of learning. But good afternoon, Mr. Rugby World Cup. Thank you very much for joining us. And Ashwin, his suggestion for making the way to unstalize, as it were, or refreshen, that's what we're looking for, the Rugby Championship is to take New Zealand out with the equation. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, I have to be careful. Oh, jeez, I nearly offended a whole bunch of people by saying that's a retarded suggestion. Oops, I just said it. Yeah. Oh, jeez, I don't know. Where do you start? It's just like, it's just, you get lost for words when people come with stupid ideas. It's like, oh, let's just take the All Blacks out and all sorts of things like that. It's just like, hey, look, at the end of the day, yeah, there's Australia and South Africa going through a bit of a rough patch at the moment. It's well, you know, you go back a couple of years and it was an all Southern Hemisphere Rugby World Cup semi-finals. You know, the strength is there. They're going through a bad patch. We've got to give it some time to see if they come back. Hey, in the meantime, I was just saying to somebody else, it's like there's a good chance that Argentina's got a great shot at coming second in the championship this year. So, you know, there's all sorts of other factors to look at. And at the end of the day, what is it with our game that everybody just wants to bag it? You know, well, instead of enjoying our game, they just want to bag it. You can have all sorts of things going wrong in any other sport, and nobody jumps on the bandwagon to say, oh, it's rubbish, we should scrap it all. And it's like, get rid of the sport altogether. But no, that's what rugby does.
It does. And Mr. Rugby World Cup, I know it was tongue-in-cheek when he was saying that. He's someone I've known on Twitter for a very long time. There definitely needs to be a change, though. And I think first off is, if you look at every other or long-standing competitions, they alter the schedule. The fact that it is the same games in the same order every single year does need a change. You can't, and that's definitely part of it. So that does have to. That is one change that needs to happen. The other change that I think is in the works is obviously Japan and the Pacific Islands and how they get incorporated in some sort of annual competition, whether that's the Rugby Championship or a kind of feeder Rugby Championship. I don't really know, but having the same games in the same order is wrong. I think New Zealand and Australia should travel first and go to South Africa and South America to open the tournament sometimes, and I don't think it should always be in the same order, the games.
Yeah, no, look, I didn't even realise that until I think we had a brief discussion along these lines a few shows ago, and somebody raised that fact. It's just like the format of the games has been the same, and as I said, I wasn't actually aware of it, and I also wasn't aware of that it's actually been for a long time now that it's been like that. In my head, it's like, yeah, one year we start in South Africa, and the next year it's sort of over that you know, in my head that going back it was like that. So, and once I figured it out, like, that's absolutely wrong. They do need to shuffle it around in terms of the start, where it starts, how it starts. Yep, absolutely. And then, you know, you look at throwing the other sort of bringing in some sort of team to add some sort of other dimensions to it. Give Australia and South Africa somebody else to actually be competitive against.
The competitive against or to beat, yes. But I mean, also the other thing also to put into that is that is I think one of Australia's big problems is the lack of consistency of games on TV. Whereas, if you ask me, when are the games for the Mitre 10 Cup for the next 2 weeks or in 3 weeks' time, I'll tell you. There's one at 7:35 on a Wednesday, and on a Thursday, and on a Friday. There'll also probably be one about 5 o'clock on a Friday. There'll be a 2 and a 4 o'clock on Saturday, and a 2 and a 4 o'clock on Sunday. And you know
the one on the second game on Friday is only if there's an All Blacks test on Saturday in New Zealand.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so it'd be 3.
But that's okay. But you get these things. You know that if there's an All Blacks game in New Zealand on Saturday, there'll be a 5 o'clock. But you're absolutely right. Bang, 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 bang. Yet my wife still asks me what time the game's on.
But we can schedule our lives around when those games are because we know when they are, and they're at the same time every single week for the whole season. In Australia, they don't have that luxury. I mean, even during Super Rugby, we know we've always got a 7:30 Saturday and a 7:30 Sunday. Sorry, 7:30 Friday and 7:30 Saturday. Now, there'll be other games in and around that, but we know we've got those 2 evening games. The other ones move.
Absolutely.
In Australia, they can go for a couple of weeks without any games on an evening.
Yep. And not only that, but you're highlighted by the fact that the first Bledisloe got its kickoff time changed only like a week or week and a half before it kicked off. It's just like, that's just, no words can explain how bad that is when a week and a half before a game is kicking off, they move the game forward by, I think it was half an hour.
And potentially one of the biggest games of the season as well. One of the oldest rivalries. I mean, the opening game of the international window, it's Bledisloe Cup. It has everything historically and marketing-wise. You'd go for it.
Well, if the Saturday's game is any reflection in Suncorp, it's their big game. The Bledisloe game in Australia is their big game for the year, and so you want to make sure that you got all your ducks in a row.
Yep. Mr. Rugby World Cup says in Australia it's a 5:30 game coming out of New Zealand, and that works very well for them as well. It's most people will be able to get home from work by then to watch it, or if not, they can just stumble out to a bar post Friday, post work drinks, have a game in the background while you're having a few beers before you head home. Works perfectly. The problem is that they don't get to see their own teams at 7:30, and it's not every single week. And it gets messed. It all jumps around. And they need to set it hard in stone and have so people can get into a routine of when they when they go and watch these games.
But the benefits of the 5:30 kickoff Aussie time is the fact is that there's no competition from other sports for it, and they're actually watching some quality rugby.
Oh, dearie me, that New Zealand arrogance again.
Hey, look, on a serious note, what it highlights though is that the issues that Australia's got is very different to what issues that South Africa's got. Australia's just the fact that they really just don't have, as you say, it's the structure around it, the governance around it, the management around it is just poor at the moment, and that's probably going to reflect through into everything, including on the field as well.
Yep, the problems in South Africa are, as we mentioned before, is the fact that basically the Currie Cup and Super Rugby look very similar. It's the same teams playing the same games as far as local derbies go, which is one of their problems. Obviously, they have other kind of issues around governance, which is around the kind of the quota things and losing. Both countries have problems with losing players and not necessarily having all their stars available to attract people to come and watch. But as you say, they are different issues. The two countries have, and Japan obviously has a whole different set of issues, as does Argentina. I must admit, the Argentina ones I'm not as au fait with. New Zealand's issues are basically people like sitting in their armchairs rather than going to games. That's the real problem. And they haven't, and that culture
and they'll
of going
make
to
any
games has gone.
Yep, and they'll make any excuse, whatever. I've got to get a haircut. I've got to wash my shoes, whatever, to say, oh yeah, it doesn't work with me. These absolute ridiculous arguments about the cost of tickets, the cost of food, etc., etc. It's just excuse after excuse after excuse for not going to the game. When the reality is that they're just too lazy to actually go to the thing.
Yeah, it's just that people have got out of the culture of going to live rugby.
Yep.
To a certain extent, that isn't the case in some parts of rural New Zealand. But all you have to do is look at some. So I was down in Taranaki for the Shield, for the Ramfurly Shield.
Shield game. That's you call it, the Shield game.
The Shield
right.
game, yes.
You just call it the Shield game.
And I know a whole bunch of people there that decided not to go to games because they couldn't sit side on in the stands. They'd have to sit at the end, and they didn't like that idea because obviously there were earthquake problems. Again, you're coming down to excuses again, but again, it's a matter of the culture has gone out of turning up and watching games live, and Sky has done a very good job of changing that culture to sit in your armchair and watch the game instead.
Absolutely, yeah. And the interesting thing is that what's happened in New Zealand's taken, obviously, as was just said, Australia's issues are different to South Africa's. New Zealand's issues, again, different again. And the fact is that they actually could have learnt some lessons along the way. What has happened in New Zealand rugby has actually happened in Auckland rugby first before it's gone through the other regions. Everybody used to sit and laugh at the empty stadium that was Eden Park and say, look, nobody goes to rugby in Auckland. It's just like, you guys don't understand what's actually happening, and the reality is what's happening here will probably happen in your regions as well. So Auckland was all dominant in the late 80s and early 90s, or majority of the 90s, and so it's just like a lot of, got bored of watching Auckland win and going along Auckland win. Well, guess what? Same thing's happened down in Christchurch now.
Oh,
when you can't sell
sell
out
a Super Rugby quarter-final or semi-final. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just that nobody learnt the lessons of what was happening in Auckland and was just complacent in the whole, the word that I can't say, parochialism in the regions was just like laugh at Auckland, but instead of learning the lessons of what was happening and putting measures in place to make sure it didn't happen, they just let it happen. And it's happened. Now, there's a slight difference, and a slight difference in, as you said, with the NPC Mitre 10 Cup, is the fact is that the regional guys have basically started to say, oh, look, we watch Super Rugby, but our team is our local team. And you're starting to see good numbers going along to the teams that aren't represented in Super Rugby.
Yeah, but but even when I went down to Palmerston North for Manawatu versus Waikato, there was an awful lot of empty seats.
Sure.
It's going to be interesting when I'm making an assumption here, but when I go to, I think you're joining me for Counties Manukau on Saturday, as to what the, maybe I'm going my own, I'm sorry, I'm jumping to conclusions here, as to what the crowd will be for that. They're doing a double header. And then on Sunday also for North Harbour. But I mean, North Harbour's more kind of Auckland-like. So it'll be, again, interesting to see what the Albany crowd is going to be.
Yep, absolutely. It is. You're looking at some good rugby happening, and it's just like, geez, what else? What more could you? What more could they do to drag people into the stadium? Because a lot of the games that we're watching in Mitre 10 Cup are actually pretty good quality. There's some good rugby.
Oh, there's some very good rugby, and there is no short-term fix. What we need, what really needs to happen, is they need to work on re-establishing that culture of going to the game, and re-establishing that it's, across generations. So getting parents to take the kids, and then those kids will get they'll get used to going with their parents, and so when they get older, they'll still go with their parents. It helps keep part of the family unit together, and they'll take their kids along. When you've got three generations going together, it's what you do with dad, with mum, at the weekend. That's how you bring it back. Trying to do it trying to put on some sort of gimmick or some sort of marketing campaign that suddenly will fill a game fill a stadium for the next game isn't going to happen. It needs a 10, 15 year plan.
Absolutely, to grow it over that time. Absolutely. This conversation in terms of the Rugby Championship going stale has really been brought about by obviously Facebook groups, Twitter comments, etc. That the old Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, and obviously you're starting to see, like obviously with the Six Nations, the grounds are sold out. We're seeing a lot of the competitions up there. When you hear about them, they're getting grounds sold out. So yeah, there's and then you get into the argument, which one's better? Well, at the moment, the one that's dragging in the people to watch it has to be the better competition.
And now, before we go and talk about selling out grounds, if we look at what the sort of grounds that the Super Rugby has played in, we're talking Eden Park, 40-odd thousand. We're talking other grounds are at least 25,000 kind of plus. If you look at the Viva Premiership, to get into the Viva Premiership, you've got to have a ground of 10,000. So if we go to South Africa, we're talking about grounds there that can fit 80,000, even 100,000. Yeah. So if we're talking about sold out grounds, most of the Viva Premiership grounds are around that 10,000 mark. They're not much bigger than that, 10 to 12,000. There are a couple of exceptions that you have there. London Irish play in a football stadium that's over 20,000, but they never get more than a quarter full. Leicester Tigers, I think they're 22,000, and they do fill that.
Bath filled out the weekend.
Sorry,
was it Bath or was Bristol or was it Bristol? Who's the old Stephen Luator and Pat Lamb? They sold out, I believe.
Bristol just got promoted. It was their opening game again of their first game at the Premiership level. It was against their classic rivals Bath, and they got 25,000. Now, that you couldn't have put together a better marketing dream to get people in than that. So we have to see how sustainable that is. And after a couple of losses, because they are going to lose a number of games.
How many people still there?
How many people?
Who's the believers?
But as a starting point, fantastic. Well done, Bristol. I don't want to be, again, let's talk about the positives, not the negatives. But we have to have an element there of of realism that's not necessarily going to happen every single game. But and Exeter Chiefs, for example, are slowly building up their ground. So it's going to be a 15,000 seater stadium, but at the moment it's 12, and they're filling it on a fairly regular basis. Not every game, but they're getting over 10,000 a game, which is good. But then if you go to Worcester, for example, their average, or Sale or Newcastle, they're more around the 5,000-6,000 mark. Let's not try and oversell quite how the Northern Hemisphere crowds are increasing rather than decreasing, which is fantastic, but they are coming from a much lower point, whereas the Super Rugby sides are on the down, but they used to get 30,000, 40,000, so they used to be 3 or 4 times bigger than that.
Absolutely. I mean, you used to get when you look at Auckland. Well, actually, you could look at the big ones out of the big stadiums. So the Auckland, obviously, Wellington with the Hurricanes, Crusaders, and then the Highlanders had big grounds that fit 35,000 minimum. And yeah, you've just seen that as over time the numbers dwindle. And I mean, you look at the Crusaders scenario, and it's really bad because they've gone to a stadium that only fits 25,000, and they struggle to get anywhere near capacity in that when you've got a championship winning team.
Good championship winning team in the semi-finals against the Hurricanes, one of your classic rivals, and you still can't.
Yeah. Still can't. But you know what the reason is? It's because of global warming. It's got colder in Christchurch, so that's why they can't go.
Yeah.
I really scratch my head on that one. It's just like Lancaster Park didn't have a roof on it, and supposedly it was colder then.
Anyway.
Anywho.
So basically what we need to do, we need to SANZAAR need to realise there are different problems in different countries. They need to stop squabbling about how they fix those, which is one of the problems that they've had, is that they have not been able to come to agreement. They're always arguing about who gets more teams, who gets less teams. Whereas in reality, what they need to be looking at is not so much that, but actually getting bums on seats. Because bums on seats also makes it look better on TV, which makes it look like more people want to watch it, so more people will watch it, and it becomes a circular thing. But one of the things you said, you touched on earlier, was around the negativity around our sport. So at the weekend, there was a couple of things happened. One of the big things I had this down to talk about later was the Ranfurly Shield and how Taranaki lost the Ranfurly Shield to Waikato, and how Waikato now, that was on Sunday, will be defending the Shield on Thursday. Having read an article, and I'm not going to give them the publicity, but of one of New Zealand's leading newspapers. So there's only two, so you have a quick guess as to which one it was. But the tone of their article was how Taranaki had managed to lose the Shield, and how Waikato could be the shortest ever duration holders of the Shield because the next game's on Thursday, rather than how Waikato had won the Shield and the positivity around what could be happening with a quick defence against Hawke's Bay. It was all on the how can I write a negative article around this, rather than talk about the fact that yes, Waikato have managed to get a hat-trick of wins over Taranaki to take the Shield off them. The third time, that's how Taranaki have lost the Shield the last 3 times, and talk about it from the positive point of view of how great it is for Waikato. No, it had to be how bad it was for Taranaki, and how Waikato were likely to lose it to Hawke's Bay, rather than Hawke's Bay, small province, much smaller than Waikato, and how this short turnaround might be positive for them to have a good chance of winning it. No, let's not talk about it from that point of view. Let's deliberately look at it from a negative stance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also I had coffee with a friend of ours, Pierre, this morning, and we also talked about how wonderful Auckland have been looking.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's I was going to allude to that, but I was wondering whether I should or not. But now you've thrown it out there. What I'll be more interested to see is that, 2 things: to see that consistency now, which appears to be there, but a couple of more games to really show it. And then if they are travelling and they do keep this roll going of winning the games, whether, coming back to our first topic, whether the numbers increase. At the moment, Auckland's getting something like about 3,500 people coming along to a game, which is pretty much laughable, really, in terms of a crowd for an Auckland team. And realistically, I'd suggest that if they were able to get successful, get into the semi-finals and finals even, that you're looking at a crowd of 10,000 plus to start turning up. And that's what you'd expect. If they don't, there's some serious questions that the administration would want to be asking. What's going on? Why can't we get people to the ground?
No, absolutely. And we've been talking about this for a while now, but we could, let's wind back and give people a kind of indication as to some of this. So, how long have you been a season ticket or an Auckland rugby member?
I'll be honest, I can't remember. That's how long I have. I mean, to give you an indication, I've been my nephew is now 24, and I was a season ticket holder before he was born, and then he got a season ticket holder. Now my son's 7, and he's got. Look, I've been going to Eden Parks. I started going to Eden Parks since '84.
So you've been a member of Auckland, basically a season ticket holder at Auckland Rugby for the best part of 30 years. When you started going, how many of you were there in your crowd?
Well, it's probably about 10 people coming along. Was a different 10 to the bunch that sat behind you when you were going along, but it was 10 people.
I'm getting there first.
Roughly.
But that 10 then grew, because I think you're up to, what, about a 20?
No, look, the highest I got to was about 14 that I was buying season tickets for.
And now you're down to, what, 6?
4.
4. So, that gives you an indication.
No, you're right. 6, sorry. 6. Sorry,
6.
You're right. 6. Oh, I forgot about Sandup. Sorry if you're listening and watching.
But there's an indication of a crowd that enjoyed going and seeing rugby together, but things such as having a poor team to watch that didn't seem to care, having a franchise organisation that didn't seem that was seemed to be bickering the whole time and not looking after its fans, family issues getting in the way, things like moving your members' lounge so it was inconvenient to get to. All of these things everything seemed to be, and there wasn't anything positive or trying to encourage you guys to come back. There was, it just felt like, and it still feels like, that it's just taken for granted.
Look, if you use like what you've done, if you use my situation as a case study, one of the biggest factors that you could have said that's seen as the numbers dwindle in my group is the poor treatment of us as fans. It's nothing to do with the game, but the poor treatment by the administration of the fans. That would have to rate as being one of the, probably, I'd say number one issue, because a lot of the guys that were coming along in my group, we went along because we had a good time regardless of what was happening on the field. But when obstacles got in our way of having that good time, then they're sort of going, well, the game's crap, we're not enjoying ourselves, why are we coming?
Yep. And as Andre said, people are obsessed with winning teams. Very few that follow us to do it for fun and loyalty, but the fun and loyalty is where you can grow your fan base, however well the team's doing. Whereas not every team can be successful. By definition, if someone's successful, somebody else is losing. So
there's only one championship winner a year.
Exactly, and we want, and at the end of the day, we're fans of rugby, and we want to see rugby have bigger crowds everywhere. Rather than, it's not just about trying to have a bigger crowd in Auckland. It's just that's the one we know about best, and the one we can talk about best. So that's why we talk about that one a lot. But so you say, it's that. There was an article in one of the New Zealand sports websites, not the major ones, that talks about the fact that active fans are now asked and are discouraged by New Zealand rugby. And you've got to say that's very true. And that was an example down in
Dunedin,
where people had got moved on because even though the ground, like all the grounds, was at best a tenth full, their season tickets, or their ticket numbers were for a different chair. Hello, and welcome back to the Hash Rugby Chat. I think we're up and running again. So let's just, which channels we're on, I have no idea. Probably on Facebook, probably on YouTube, probably on Facebook, probably on Periscope/Twitter, and maybe on YouTube. Who knows? We'll try. Okay, sorry about those technical interruptions, but we are back and we're bad. Now,
who's bad?
Yeah, you're bad. Oh dear, we've talked about those topics. Cool. Now, before we get back into the whole chat, I have been doing a series of videos talking to the people behind the scenes of rugby that allow the games to happen. So, talking to people like the Ball Boys manager, the performance analysis or video analyst, and as of one of the topics we talked about was active support. And when I was at the Eden Park for the Auckland versus Tasman game I sat down and had a chat with the people with the sign that has Dare to Dream Macos. So you can have that video is available for my Patreons currently, and will come out on public in about 3 days' time. And also, I've released today my behind-the-scenes chat with the matchday manager from Taranaki. Kate was a great chat there. So learn what she does on matchday to enable you to get to watch and enjoy rugby. So become a Patreon for those. As I say, for early release of those, the Kate's one will come out, will go public in 5 days' time. So patreon.com, patreon.com/DrivingMaul is how you do that. And it says you can sign up for as little as $1 a month USD, rather than, in case anyone's worrying about which currency that is. So does Brazzy have a plan? What's he up to? Because by the sounds of things, he's going to drop Yankees for this weekend, and we're back to Pollard again.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know, to tell you the truth. It's such a hard one to know what's going on with that South African team. We understood that Pollard had been dropped because he actually didn't really seem to be delivering anything. Didn't been providing anything, and so they've gone back to Yankees, and now they've gone back to Pollard. The only thing I can put that down to is more of a defensive manoeuvre, which effectively is the wrong way to go against the All Blacks. If he was going to do anything, he probably should have played Pollard against the Aussies and then Yankees against the All Blacks. They need to attack this weekend. That's the only way they win the game, is they attack, unless it's raining.
And where are they this weekend? Wellington.
Wellington. Weather forecast is for being fine.
Is it? Okay, I've not checked, but yep. So okay, so weather forecast is fine. So hence, yep, Yankees should be the starting fly half. So yeah, multiple changes yet again are being talked about, and it does feel like the only two games where we've had consistent selection were the first two tests against England. Every single test, Wales in Washington DC was expected to be a bit of an experimental side, but every single test, apart from those two, it does feel like that Razzie seems to be changing his combinations.
There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason about his changes either. It seems that's the biggest thing, is that it's just random. I didn't really quite understand starting with Marks on the bench against the Wallabies, and then he came on with about 20 minutes gone anyway. And I understand that the reasoning was that their starting hooker actually, his tank had run dry, and it was all in the plan. And to bring a hooker on after 20 minutes?
It all seems very strange as to what his selection policies are. Some of them you look at and go, okay, I can understand that he has constraints other coaches don't have around his selection policy. But even so, looking at what he's been doing, as you say, it's very difficult to try and figure out what the plan is when we are just over a year out from the Rugby World Cup. So what combinations is he trying to put together ahead of that? Now, a certain element of new coach experimentation you can understand, but there's limits to that, and it doesn't mean change your entire team or change half the team every game.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, there's almost sort of elements of a P. Diddy starting to creep in there as well, with the fact is that,
we have J-Lo, are we?
Well, they might get down low. Because, making comments like, I expect to be fired in the next 6 months anyway. This is before the World Cup. It's like, what? It's just like, I don't know, today Fozzie came out and basically said, because, these guys are all my mates. Fozzie came out and basically said, it's probably a way to motivate your team. Even if Fozzie's right on that, it's just like, I can't see how that would motivate somebody thinking, oh, geez, the boss is going to get fired. I don't even know if I'll be in the team then if he gets fired. There might be other restructures and redundancies coming along. In a corporate world, that's what you'd be thinking. I mean, I know because my mate's going through it. His position's being restructured. His staff are all concerned because even though they realise that their boss has got a position, so they're happy for their boss, they're concerned for themselves because they don't know what sort of manager they'll get because they like their manager at the moment, but they don't know what they'll get. They've seen what's happened recently where you get somebody who's not so good. Same, at the end of the day, it's a job. Rugby's a job, and Rassie's the manager. He's sort of saying, I don't know if I'm going to be here in 6 months. I don't know if that's actually motivational for the team.
Yeah, I put a tweet out today saying that obviously Rassie doesn't think that consistency is the way to go, and yet that seems to be basically the mantra of every single World Cup winning team is that you build combinations, you have consistency, you have trust, you have people not having to worry about whether they're going to get selected or not, but you have enough competition there that they're not complacent. Yep. And it's balancing that. Now, flipping and changing does not balance that. That just means that no one knows what's happening from one week to the next. And uncertainty means you're worrying about other things rather than just playing well.
Look, I think one thing you alluded to there, people knowing what their jobs are and what their tasks are within their team. I watched a show on a pay TV channel last night. That's the first time I've seen something worth watching in terms of a rugby review program. And one of the things that they went through was that, look, you can see within the All Black squad, people know what their roles are on their field. It's just like, you can see, there was a couple of times that they showed where the player goes, I'm in the wrong place. And this could be like about 20 meters away. And you see them running back and maneuvering back into their position to be in the right place to do their job. Not just saying, oh yeah, I've got to stay over here because I'm standing over here. No, I have to get back to where my job is. And the way you build that is by consistency of selection and the team playing together and getting that time out on the field.
Yeah, and Andre says Rassie is building experience within the squad. He doesn't have a lot of time to do that. He doesn't. That's very true. But I think what he needs to do is build. Because he hasn't got time. Is he's got to say, okay, I cannot actually build depth in my squad. What I have to do is I have to just build experience in my first 23. And hope they get through it.
First, build confidence in the 15. You have to start with Marks. He just has to start. I mean, if you go back, you Dane Coles type scenario results. The only way, unfortunately, you're going to have to run them out there. The All Blacks don't worry about flogging their playing stocks to death. They do have depth, so they can rotate injuries, etc. But at the moment, the situation that South African rugby is, Australian rugby is, you've got to roll out your top 15 and ask them to do the job for you and trust that they will.
Yeah, individuals, I think you can occasionally, you can maybe rotate around a little bit, but rotating 6 or 7 changes per game is just too much. So yeah, I'm not anti Marks having some bench time. I am anti not knowing who is your first choice 10, who is your first choice centre combination, because we're into about the third or fourth different centre combination that we've had since he started.
Look, here's the other thing, right? At the end of the day, if you can't get that combination of 10, 19, 12 sorted, roll up the sleeves, give it to the forwards and say, just take it forward, boys. Hold on to it and don't lose it. Pollard, kick into the corners. But that's what you have to do. Don't worry about what the other team's doing. Do what you need to do to win the game.
Got to agree. Moving on now then, it has been National Suicide Prevention Day or World Suicide Prevention Day around the world. So please, you'll have seen if you want to have a look at some of my mental health videos I've put out there. If you actually watched the video that I did recently with Real End Games, where he interviews me about my YouTube stuff, we also touch on that as well, and you'll see some of the stuff that some of the issues I had on there as well. So, look, I may not have been here. I have been in those situations. So, please do reach out. Please do talk to somebody. And if you need someone to talk to because you've got no one else, then feel free to reach out to me. I do know where you're coming from. So, breakdown and jackling has been a key topic recently. Neck rolls, crocodile rolls, whatever you want to call them. What
Maybe shark?
Shark rolls. Sharks don't roll.
Hey, what is the solution? Is actually the referees are the solution. It is the correct ruling at the breakdowns, which will stop a lot of the guys that are going in. Let's look at David Pocock, who's obviously sort of put up there as being the number one jackler in our game. You know, number one pulfer of ball, Pocock or Hooper sort of scenario. But if you actually look at what he does, most of the times his hands are going down on the ground past the ball. So he's doing his pulfering illegally, yet the referee is letting him get away with it. And because he's getting, and while he's there and while he's trying to go back on the ball, he's getting beaten up. If the referee had actually come in and said that your hands have gone past the ball, hands off the ball, you've lost it, he's going to pull his hands out. He's not there. He's not getting injured.
And
most of the pulferers are going past the ball. They're not supporting their body weight. No way. And
it's not just about the Pocock one either. It's also about, we saw similar things happen in the Rugby Premiership this weekend. There's if you look on Twitter, you'll see there's a good clip going around about something that happened during the Bath Bears game, I think it is, where a player basically he's over the ball, his head's below his hips, which gives you a good indication. His shoulders below his hips, which is a good indication. At scrum time, that's how you collapse. So it's a good indication that his weight is being supported by his hands. And then the clear out player, where can they hit? The only place they're going to make contact with is in around the neck and the head. And so I think we do need to. There needs to be some clarification around the rules. Yes, the rule, but basically something along the lines of, if your shoulders are beneath your hips, that's illegal, and I'm going to blow it straight away for safety reasons. Because as soon as your shoulders are below your hips, you're going to get hit in a dangerous position, and we need to sort of sort this out, because sooner or later, and it's going to be sooner rather than later, someone is going to get seriously hurt. Yeah, look, conversely, just in terms of that, if the pulferer genuinely gets hands on the ball while supporting their own body weight, the referee again needs to blow the whistle quicker, because the player who's been tackled with the ball hasn't released the ball. The number of times rucks actually defy the law, rucks going backwards defy the laws of physics. Somehow attacking players can go back and around and blow the player away in time, whereas the defender has been standing over the ball and still can't get the ball out. I'm left scratching my head. Surely that's a penalty because the guy on the ground is holding the ball. So if the rules are enforced, then we will reduce the injuries, or the likelihood of injuries in the breakdown. Well, one of the points that was made recently was around George Smith being perhaps probably the original pilferer of the ball, which just tells you that basically pilfering has only been around for about 10 years. Before that, it didn't exist. Yep. So, for those of you who suddenly shout, it's not rugby, at my next comment, just bear in mind, it's only been rugby for 10 years. Before that, it wasn't rugby, if you get what I mean. But I think there's an argument to say, no hands in at all, you have to drive over. Well, I still don't. I've asked this question of a few people, because when I played the game, it's just like before you entered a ruck, you had to join with somebody
to blow through a ruck. You couldn't go in as an individual. It was illegal. You had to bind to enter a ruck.
Well,
and therefore,
and
you clear out.
The other point is again, the pilfering has led to basically clear outs, and clear outs are not rucking because they do not bind onto the player. You just smash the player out the way.
Smash the player out the way.
Which isn't binding onto him and pushing him off, which is what rucking 10 years ago was.
Well, the other thing we talked about this a while ago in terms of the fact is that if you have to bind with somebody, you're actually going to be more effective because the mass to go over the ruck. The other thing that is going to stop happening is the single individual that builds up momentum and flies into the ruck because he has to slow down to bind with somebody to actually enter the ruck. So that the velocity of the impact is going to be reduced, but the power is still going to be there if you join. So you can clear out the ruck, but the velocity and therefore the impact is going to be reduced.
So I would say actually, I'd be happy with saying no hands at all, even for that first arriver.
Yep.
And saying that look, you have to drive the opposition off the ball, and that you have to bind on somebody. Get rid of this clear outs that smash somebody away. No, you have to bind onto them and push them. And also, and Andre says, the biggest issue is clearing players that fly in from the sides. Surely that's dangerous too. Yep, that's also dangerous. But it's this.
And if you have to bind, you can't do it.
If we get rid of jackling and get rid of then we don't need the clearing, which has come in because of jackling, and we get back to what rugby was 10 years ago, and then we won't have all these neck rolls and crocodile rolls and people trying to grab around the neck. And
another outcome of it will be the fact is the situation where the guy blowing out over the ruck individually decides to go and take the player that's got nothing to do with the ruck past the ruck.
And that is starting to get blown up, to be fair.
Yeah, that is getting, but inconsistently, to be fair.
True. Andre says All Blacks fly in a straight angle and no ref picks up on that. Stop clear outs. Andre, I would say that yes, the All Blacks do that, but so does every single other team in professional rugby. Maybe not. I don't watch enough club rugby to say how far down it goes, but definitely all professional teams do that. It's not an All Blacks only thing by any stretch of the imagination. So there we go. There's me making rugby not rugby and making it too soft for all of you out there. Final thing on our discussion for tonight. The Rugby World Cup. They're talking about expanding it to 24 teams in either 2019 or probably 2023. What do you think of that?
I like it. Obviously, the only concern is the blowouts. That's it. Other than that, there's no reason. It's a great idea, I think.
So, I guess a couple of things to point out. So let's have a quick. If we're looking at how would we add 4 more teams, if we look at the repechage, that probably gives a good idea as to the kind of teams that we're talking about that would be that will be included. So in the repechage we have Canada, who are most likely to probably qualify. Hong Kong, who have gone professional from Asia. We've got Germany from Europe, from the FAST that has been the European qualification system. I've gone blank as to the Africa team that's in there as well. I think it's an Africa team that's the other one. Anyway, so
Kenya or Namibia?
Probably Namibia. So actually, Namibia might beat Canada to go in. We'll see. Now, clearly, normally Germany wouldn't be there, and it would be probably Romania, who have a stronger rugby history, or Spain, who are throwing a lot of money and trying to improve, as has been seen by the fact that both their women's and men and the women's team made the Women's Rugby World Cup, and both the women and men made the Olympic sevens. So, thank you, Andre, for confirming it's in Namibia. So, those are the sort of sides that we would be seeing entering in to the Rugby World Cup. Now, Namibia we saw there at the last one anyway. So we've shown that they can compete. Canada have been there regularly so they can compete. Now, there's a big assumption around Canada that their administration doesn't get even worse and make because at the moment they have administration issues going on in Canada with, which I think saw the 7s or the 15s men basically walk away pretty much from the administration and say, hey, we're going to look after ourselves for a little bit. Thank you very much until you get your act sorted. So they're in a bit of a mess, but on the assumption that historically they've shown they can compete. Hong Kong, I've just said, have gone full-time professional, which Namibia weren't. So it is probably about time that we can start looking at those ones. Now, the big thing we need to do, though, is get them a few years preparation rather than expecting it to happen all in one go. I think that to me, that's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Put the support structure in place to help them get to the best position that they possibly can. That would be in the best interests of everybody. As I say, my concern being the blowouts, you just got to make sure that doesn't happen. Other than that, it's a good positive move to try and get as much involvement as possible. The other thing that obviously have to be wary of is that they don't basically shaft the minnows and give them 3 games in a week, and that doesn't happen to the top nations.
Yeah, we've got to have some sort of way, whether it means that you end up looking at doing quarterfinals and having more groups, or how you sort of split it. I'm not sure about the mechanics of it, but as you say, we've got to make sure that all teams have the same recovery period. Otherwise, it just makes it a crazy situation.
I don't think there's been any arguments against having expansion of the World Cup to 24. It's 24, isn't it? That'll be going to.
Yep. Yeah, I can't see how that kind of works, to be honest, because currently we have 4 groups of 5.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Do you go to 6 groups of 4, or do you have 4 groups of 6? I'm not quite sure how that's going to work from that point of view.
It makes and I suppose they have to be a bit wary of the length of the tournament. I mean, you go to 4 groups of 6, you're adding an extra week or more of games.
And Andre puts in there, I would like to see two tournaments run at the same time, e.g. cup and plate sections. What I'd like to see is it starts combined, but when you get to knockout stages, the other teams go into a plate knockout. Might be good. So that they get more games, because at the moment they get games against tier 1 teams and basically they lose all their games. Then it'd be nice to then have this sort of the tier 2 secondary competition knockout piece to go towards a plate one, which I think they could easily sell the tickets for at smaller venues.
At smaller venues, or even as a curtain raiser to the tier 1, the championship knockout game.
True, could do it that way.
Yeah. Get better value for money for the punter going in there, who's paying a lot of money for their tickets at Rugby World Cups, remember?
Yep, very true. So, a bit of an interesting one in the live chat there. Do you see Checker lasting past the Rugby World Cup? Could you see Gatland as a possible replacement? So it's part 1. How far do you see Checker going?
Oh, look, that's a difficult one. At the end of the day, he took his team to a final last World Cup. If he takes his team to a final again, that puts that Australian Union in a difficult position. That this guy's taken us to 2 World Cup finals, but we're performing crap. Is that his fault that they're performing crap? If they don't have the depth, is that his fault? Or is that the administrator's issue to create the depth for him to be able to choose from? Yeah, that's a tough one, tell you the truth. My own thing is that I think, if he takes Australia to another final, then he stays on, and Lucky Cat gets to be in the commentary box.
Sorry? Lucky Cat gets in the commentary box. Okay. First one, I think he'll probably stand down after the next Rugby World Cup anyway.
Get in clothing business.
Yeah, I mean, does he really want to be have the stress and hassle of it going forwards. I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he's driven to stick on. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him say that's it. I've had enough anyway. Thank you very much. As far as Warren Gatland potentially being Australian rugby coach, it didn't go too well when they had the last Kiwi coaching them, did it? Let's be honest. Now, if you look at the records of the recent Australian Wallaby coaches, what you'll see is that each coach has a smaller winning record than the previous one. So actually, Dingo Deans had a better winning percentage than Checker and a better winning percentage than, I've gone blank. Who was the guy that was there before?
I'm just having a look at that now, actually.
Anyway,
if I can.
So he had a better winning percentage than the two coaches that have followed him. The two coaches that have followed him have both been, well, him and the two that follow him have all been Super Rugby winning coaches. So they're not bad coaches at the end of the day.
Ewan McKenzie?
Yes, Ewan McKenzie. Yeah. So Ewan McKenzie had a lower winning record than Dingo Deans, and Checkers had a lower winning record than both of them. So, and so they're all Super Rugby winning coaches. They're good coaches. There are other problems there than coaching, is basically the message. And they just haven't progressed as well as the other countries they've come across. So changing Czech isn't going to fix your problems overnight. That's for certain. He's not the problem. He's the guy who carries the can, unfortunately. I would see him. I probably think I'd had enough of having to carry that can, knowing that basically I was trying to do a job with one arm tied behind my back the whole time.
Yep.
But no, I cannot.
So who's the options? Daryl Gibson. Laurie Fisher.
Now,
sorry, my bad.
Laurie's a good coach. He's not a good head coach. That's the problem with Laurie Fisher. I can't see Gatland being Aussie coach. I don't think the Aussie public are ready for another Kiwi coach. I think Vessels, the South African at the Melbourne Rebels, is the most likely to step up and be the next Wallabies coach. Or Bernie.
Yeah, Bernie. I was going to say Bernie.
Who has not done particularly well didn't do particularly well with the Brumbies. And are you happy with the Australian attack currently?
Yes, because he's in there, isn't he?
So personally, I think Wessels would probably be the best choice at Melbourne. Obviously, after what he did with the Force, but we'll have to wait and see how that all pans out. Other questions in there. What are your thoughts on England being in a group with France and Argentina? Could Eddie struggle? Yes, he could. Put bluntly.
England's going home.
We could be. At the end of the day,
yep.
What were the questions that we had? The questions around the England team when basically Lancaster couldn't answer were: what is England's back row in particular? How do you solve their 7 issue? And 2, what is England's centre combination? And if you look at Eddie Jones, what are the questions he has outstanding? How does he do England's back row, and who is the number 7? And what centre combination does he use? Because again, so the questions we were asking under Stuart Lancaster are the exact same questions we're asking 3 years later under Eddie Jones. So,
but he's got Brad Shields now.
He's a 6. He's not a 7. And you know that very well, sir. Brad Shields, a very good player, adds depth to the squad. Does he answer the England 7 question? No, he doesn't. At the end of the day, He'll be battling it out with Rob Shaw for that 6 jersey. Billy Vinapola, if he's fit, will be number 8. But is Haskell the answer at 7? Is Underwood? Is Curry? Who is that?
You watch all that European stuff. So name someone out of left field, even that they could. What about an actual genuine number 7 open side flanker? They haven't sort of had since Anil back.
They haven't, have they? And
No.
there are a number of people who I say Curry and Underwood are two. If you're looking for something, Underwood are sort of more your Sam Cane, I think, kind of style 7 rather than a Neil Back style 7. An interesting one just is that Matt Kovacic was a player that was talked about as being a potential a couple of years ago, and several England managers have brought him in, and then he's basically been around for a couple of training sessions and then gone home. What he's done is he's moved to Exeter rather than Gloucester, and Exeter have a reputation of basically bringing the best out of players. So if you look at someone like Thomas Waldron, a lot of people thought his career was coming to an end at Leicester Tigers. The next 2 seasons, he was the top try scorer in the Rugby Premiership. So it's taken Matt Kovacic a bit longer, but at the beginning of this season, they've started to see a player who doesn't just concentrate on pilfering, which is what he's kind of been told to do, and is become a bit more of a ball player. Is kind of the indicators we're seeing at the beginning of this season. So it'll be interesting to see how he grows. If you're looking for a left field suggestion, that's a left field suggestion. There is also some thoughts that potentially that Exeter players are good because of the system, or look better than they are because of the system, rather than because they're wonderful. So
we've seen that in local rugby too. Players that look better because they're playing in a system that works.
Yep, and so if you're going to have a player like Thomas Waldron suddenly become top try scorer as number 8, and the first forward to be top try scorer in something like a decade, clearly the system works. That's not done just by an individual.
Yep. Because he hasn't come back to Wellington Lions and become a try-scoring machine.
I'm not sure he's scored yet this season, has he?
No. And he looked. I mean, like I have to admit, I haven't actually seen. I don't think I've seen a full Lions match, but from the bits that I've seen, he hasn't exactly gone forward.
So I did actually. I have seen him play because he was at Waikato last Wednesday.
Yep.
For Wellington versus Waikato, or Waikato versus Wellington for Waikato's first win of the season. I actually interviewed him after the game. So if you want to go and search out my Waikato versus Wellington video, you can see my little chat with him after the game, where I ask him whether he's managed to bring back, or whether he's decided to set up a cookie club or sandwich club like he had in Exeter. Now he's back in Wellington. But
so what is Cookie Club?
So he did say that basically the nutritionalists or the strength and conditioning coaches and the nutritionists are a bit stricter over here with the young boys, and that whereas in England I think it was that they were given a little bit more free reign, and that so they used to have basically at Exeter they have Cookie Club and Sandwich Club, and basically once there are 2 groups who do not mix within the squad. In a nice way, not in a bad way. And basically, they take it in turn. The Cookie Club, they take it in turns to bake cookies for, and they meet up once a week. And whoever's turn it is that week brings the cookies along, and with their coffees after one of their training sessions, I can't remember if it's Wednesday or Thursday, they have cookies. Now, yes, is that your perfect nutrition? No, it's not. Is it a good way of team bonding that isn't alcohol related? Yes. So, New Zealand Super Rugby sides and Australian NRL sides maybe want to take a leaf out of that book as to a non-Mad Monday way of team building.
But he raised the valid point as well, is that in New Zealand or the nutritionists that are associated with the teams keep a tight rein on the young fellas, because they've usually come from a background of not having a great diet.
They have, and if you look at the Once Warriors. Pacific Warriors. Sorry, Once Warriors are totally different.
Once Warriors, yeah, a little bit different.
Sorry, hearing me. The Pacific Warriors documentary, looking at, and you listen to some of the stories from those boys. You do have to keep them away from fried chicken, and they are totally. They admit it wholeheartedly that yes, the fried chicken is their downfall. So yes. Will we have a different rugby champ winner before 2050? Yes, the USA will come and win it in 2027. There we go. And they'll never lose it again. Oh, dear me. So I'm not quite sure how long this has gone on for, because we've had outages and stuff.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody. It has been great fun. A quick reminder that if you become a Patreon, you get access to some of my behind the scenes and other videos that I've been doing ahead of public release. So go over to patreon.com/DrivingMaul and become a Patreon for as little as $1 a month and get advanced access to those. Also, if you do that and you say, hey, Paul, I would like a video on XYZ topic, preferably rugby related, I will do you a video on that topic behind that paywall so no one else can see it privately, just for the Patreons. So if you have a topic you want me to talk about, please go ahead and do that. And I say I will do you a private video of me talking about it. And hey, if you ask really, really nicely, I might even get Alstron on to do it as well.
I was just saying, while you're talking about it, I'm signing up.
So, thank you very much, Alstron. It has been an absolute pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been good, and we shall talk, because we might be able to do a joint sort of communication from Growers Stadium in Pukekohe on the weekend.
Growers Stadium, is that what it's called? Okay.
I don't know. It used to be called that. I don't know if it still is or not. I can't keep up with that. I'm old. I forget these things.
Oh dear. Yep. So far, they haven't come back to me with my press accreditation, so I'm going to have to chase them up tomorrow.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I will have that, because if I just reach down here, and let me try and lift these up into shot. This is my collection of different press accreditations from this season. It's different for each ground, you see.
Right, yeah, you can't get one for just like, hey, I'm accredited. I'm coming in.
Next season, I will try and get an all-ground accreditation, but this season I've been getting them per province. But yeah, no, they've the guys at Waikato have said they will try and help me get an all-grounds access for next season.
Okay. Yep,
so
cool.
We'll see how that hopefully that pans out. So, thank you, everybody. It's been a blast. Catch you all next time. Oh, well, we're back tomorrow night with the All Blacks edition.